Marcus Thompson stood in front of the large glass doors of the Grand Plaza Hotel, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. The cool air from the lobby hit his face as he entered, a welcome relief from the hot summer day outside. At 45 years old, Marcus had worked his way up from being a dishwasher to owning several successful hotels across the country. Today was different, though. This was his newest purchase, the famous Grand Plaza Hotel. He wore simple clothes, a plain black t-shirt, comfortable blue jeans, and white sneakers. His short-trimmed beard showed touches of gray, and his kind eyes carried the wisdom of someone who had seen both struggles and success. A small backpack hung from his shoulder, containing his laptop and some important papers. He looked just like any other tired traveler, which was exactly what he wanted. The lobby was beautiful, with its high marble ceilings and crystal chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. Well-dressed people moved around, dragging their expensive suitcases across the shiny floor. Hotel staff in neat uniforms rushed back and forth, helping guests with bright smiles on their faces. Marcus watched everything carefully, noting how the doorman greeted each new arrival, how the bellboys carried bags, and how the front desk staff talked to guests. 25 years ago, Marcus had started as a dishwasher in a small roadside diner. He remembered those long nights of washing plates, his hands always wet and smelling of soap, but he had big dreams. He saved every penny he could, took night classes in business, and learned everything about running a restaurant. Then he opened his first small hotel, working day and night to make it successful. Now, he owned 12 hotels, each one better than the last. The Grand Plaza was different. It was a 5-star hotel in the heart of the city, famous for hosting celebrities and business leaders. Marcus had bought it last week, but he kept this information secret. Only his lawyer and a few top managers knew about the change in ownership. He wanted to see how the hotel really worked, how the staff treated regular guests, and if everyone received the same good service. As he stood in the lobby, Marcus noticed small things that others might miss. He saw how the front desk clerk spoke sweetly to a white woman in expensive clothes, but became short and cold with an Asian family right after. He watched a security guard follow a young black man in a business suit for no reason, while ignoring other guests. These were the kinds of things Marcus had faced many times in his own life, and they were exactly why he was here today. Marcus walked slowly around the lobby, looking at the beautiful paintings on the walls and the fresh flowers in tall vases. He remembered being thrown out of a hotel lobby much like this one 10 years ago, when someone decided he didn't belong there. Now he owned this place, but nobody knew it yet. He planned to stay for 3 days, watching and making notes about everything he saw. Taking out his phone, Marcus opened a notes app and started typing. He wrote down the names of staff members from their name tags, how they behaved, and who they treated differently. He noticed Sarah at the front desk, James the manager walking around with his chest puffed out, and Michael the security guard who kept watching certain guests more than others. Each detail was important. A young bellboy nearly bumped into Marcus while rushing past, then gave him a suspicious look instead of an apology. Marcus added this to his notes too. He had learned long ago that change doesn't come from getting angry or fighting back right away. Real change comes from understanding the whole problem first, then fixing it from the inside out. Finding a quiet corner in the lobby, Marcus sat down in a comfortable chair. From here, he could see everything: the revolving front doors, the check-in desk, the elevators, and the entrance to the hotel restaurant. He took out his laptop and pretended to work, but his eyes missed nothing. This was day one of his secret inspection, and he had a feeling it was going to be very interesting. Soon, he would go to check in as a guest, but for now, Marcus Thompson, the new owner of the Grand Plaza Hotel, was content being invisible, watching, learning, and planning how to make this beautiful hotel truly welcoming for everyone. After spending an hour observing the lobby, Marcus Thompson walked toward the front desk of the Grand Plaza Hotel. 3 staff members were working there: Sarah Chen, a young woman with straight black hair and sharp eyes; Tom Baker, a middle-aged man who kept smiling at guests; and Lisa Morris, who was busy on the phone. Marcus noticed how Sarah had just warmly checked in an older white couple, helping them with dinner reservations and giving them tips about local attractions. As Marcus approached the desk, Sarah's smile disappeared. She looked at him as if he was in the wrong place, even though he was dressed neatly in his casual clothes. 2 other guests came to the desk after him, standing in line behind Marcus. He could hear them talking about their business meeting tomorrow. How could I help you? Sarah asked Marcus, her voice cold and professional. Her eyes moved to the guests behind him, as if hoping to help them instead. I'd like to check in, please, Marcus said politely, placing his platinum credit card and ID on the counter. I have a reservation for 3 nights. Sarah picked up his credit card like it might be fake, turning it over several times. She looked at his ID for much longer than she had checked the couple's before him. Then she started typing on her computer, her fingers hitting the keys harder than necessary. I'm sorry, sir, but I'm having trouble finding your reservation, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Are you sure you have the right hotel? Marcus nodded calmly. Yes, I'm sure. The reservation is under Thompson, Marcus Thompson. I made it last week. Sarah typed again, then picked up the phone. I need to verify some information, she said. She called someone while Marcus waited patiently. Behind him, the other guests were getting restless. Tom Baker, the smiling desk clerk, quickly called them to his station and began checking them in. Sir, there seems to be an issue with your credit card, Sarah said after hanging up the phone. I'll need to run it again. She ran the card 3 times, even though the machine showed it was approved the first time. Marcus watched as more guests came and went. A white woman in yoga clothes checked in without showing any ID. A businessman in a suit was given his key cards after just a quick glance at his credit card. But here was Marcus, standing at the desk for 15 minutes while Sarah made more unnecessary phone calls. Finally, James Peterson, the hotel manager, walked over. He was tall and thin, with graying hair and an expensive suit. Is there a problem here? He asked, looking at Marcus with suspicion. No problem, Marcus replied calmly. I'm just waiting to check into my room. We have very strict verification procedures, James said, his voice getting louder. We need to be absolutely certain about every guest's credentials. People in the lobby were starting to stare. Marcus noticed a security guard moving closer, hand on his radio. He also saw how the same strict procedures weren't being applied to other guests checking in. Sarah was now on her 3rd phone call, supposedly verifying Marcus's reservation. James stood there with his arms crossed, watching Marcus as if he expected him to cause trouble. The security guard, whose name tag read Mike, moved even closer. Marcus stayed calm. He took out his phone and quietly recorded a video of what was happening, making sure to capture how other guests were being checked in quickly at the other stations. He had seen this kind of treatment before, not just as a guest, but in the stories his hotel employees had told him over the years. After 25 long minutes, Sarah finally handed Marcus his key cards. There was no apology for the delay, no mention of hotel amenities, and no friendly smile like other guests had received. She didn't even tell them where the elevators were or what floor his room was on. Will that be all, sir? She asked, clearly wanting him to leave. Marcus took his key cards and credit card. Yes, thank you, he said politely. As he walked toward the elevators, he could hear James and Sarah talking in low voices. The security guard followed him halfway to the elevator before turning back. In the elevator, Marcus took out his notebook and wrote down everything that had happened, the exact times, the names of the staff involved, and how differently other guests were treated. This was exactly why he had decided to check his hotels this way. Sometimes, the only way to see the truth was to experience it yourself. As the elevator climbed to the 10th floor, Marcus thought about all the changes he would make once he revealed who he really was. But for now, he would continue watching and documenting. The real story was just beginning. After the difficult check-in, Marcus spent his first evening carefully watching how the Grand Plaza Hotel really worked. He sat in the hotel's fancy restaurant, the Crystal Room, where the host led him to a table near the kitchen doors, even though many better tables were empty. He noticed how other guests of color got the same treatment, while white guests were seated near the beautiful windows with city views. Marcus ordered a steak dinner and watched everything happening around him. The waiter, Robert, seemed nervous serving him and barely checked on his table. But the same waiter was all smiles and friendly chat with other guests, suggesting wine choices and describing the special dishes in detail. Marcus wrote all of this down in his notes app, including times and names. Later that night, around 10 p.m., Marcus walked through the hotel's grand hallways. Almost immediately, he noticed Mike, the same security guard from earlier, following him. Every time Marcus stopped to look at the artwork on the walls, Mike would pretend to check his radio or look at his phone. When Marcus went to the gym, Mike stood outside watching through the glass windows. "Just doing my regular rounds, sir," Mike said when Marcus caught his eye, but Marcus had been watching long enough to know that Mike only followed certain guests. He had a pattern of trailing behind people of color while barely glancing at other guests. The next morning, Marcus called for room service breakfast. The menu said delivery would take 30 to 45 minutes, but his food arrived after more than an hour. The eggs were cold, and the coffee was barely warm. Through his door's peephole, he saw the same server deliver hot, steaming breakfast trays to other rooms much faster. Marcus went down to the business center to check some emails. A white woman was using a computer without anyone bothering her, but as soon as Marcus sat down, a staff member named David quickly came over. "Sir, the business center is for hotel guests only," David said firmly. Marcus showed his room key. "I am a guest. Room 1045. David's face turned red, but he didn't apologize. Instead, he stood nearby, watching Marcus work. When another black guest came in later, David did the same thing to her, but never asked to see the room keys of any white guests who entered. During the afternoon, Marcus visited the hotel's rooftop pool. He found a quiet corner to sit and observe. A family with 2 small children was enjoying the pool. The parents were Indian, and their kids were splashing happily in the shallow end. Then James Peterson, the manager from check-in, appeared. "Please keep the noise down," James told the family sharply. "Other guests are trying to relax." Marcus looked around. There were other families with children at the pool, some making much more noise, but James only spoke to this one family. The Indian parents quietly called their children out of the pool and left, their fun afternoon ruined. When Marcus went back to his room, he found that housekeeping had only done a quick, messy job. The bed was barely made, the towels hadn't been replaced, and the coffee supplies weren't refilled. Looking at other rooms being cleaned on his floor, he saw the housekeeping staff spending much more time making everything perfect. That evening, Marcus ordered room service again. He asked for a simple burger and fries. While waiting, he heard the room service cart stop at the room next door first. Through the thin walls, he could hear the server being extremely polite, suggesting extra items and offering to fetch anything else they needed. When the same server knocked on Marcus's door, his whole attitude was different. He practically shoved the tray at Marcus, didn't mention any extras, and rushed away without his usual friendly service. The burger was overcooked and the fries were cold, just like breakfast had been. Marcus added all these incidents to his growing list of notes. He had owned hotels for many years, but seeing this kind of treatment up close was still shocking. It wasn't just 1 or 2 staff members. It was a pattern throughout the entire hotel. From the front desk to housekeeping, from the restaurant to security, there was a clear difference in how people were treated based on their skin color. As he sat in his room that night, Marcus thought about all the other guests who had faced the same treatment but couldn't do anything about it. Tomorrow would be his final day of observation, and then he would reveal who he really was. But first, he needed to see just how far this discrimination went. Little did the staff know, their biggest test was yet to come. On the morning of his 3rd day at the Grand Plaza Hotel, Marcus sat in the lobby working on his laptop. He had collected enough evidence of unfair treatment, and he planned to reveal his identity as the owner later that afternoon. But fate had other plans. A group of well-dressed people walked into the hotel for a business conference. Among them was Janet Cooper, a black woman in an expensive suit. Marcus watched as security immediately started following her, even though she was clearly with the business group. She noticed this and looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Seeing this made Marcus's blood boil, but he kept his calm. He had seen too many similar incidents over the past 2 days. He stood up and walked toward the conference room area, planning to document this latest case of discrimination. That's when everything changed. James Peterson, the hotel manager, came storming across the lobby. His face was red with anger, and he was walking straight toward Marcus. Behind him were Mike the security guard and 2 other staff members. "Sir, we need to talk," Peterson said loudly, not caring that other guests could hear. "We've received several complaints about you loitering in the lobby and making people uncomfortable." Marcus closed his laptop calmly. "I'm a guest here, Mr. Peterson, room 1045. I'm simply working in the lobby, just like many other guests." "A guest?" Peterson's voice dripped with doubt. "We've been watching you. You've been wandering around the hotel, taking notes, following people. Our guests don't feel safe." The lobby had gone quiet. People were staring. Marcus noticed that Sarah Chen from the front desk was watching with a satisfied smile. He also saw Janet Cooper and her business group had stopped to observe what was happening. "I haven't followed anyone," Marcus said firmly but politely. "I've been writing on my laptop and observing the hotel's services, which I have every right to do as a paying guest." Peterson stepped closer, trying to intimidate Marcus. "I don't believe you're a real guest. You probably snuck in. We get people like you trying to cause trouble all the time." "People like me?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What exactly do you mean by that, Mr. Peterson?" The manager's face got even redder. "Security, please escort this person out of the hotel. If he resists, call the police." Mike, the security guard, stepped forward, reaching for his radio. More hotel staff gathered around, and guests were pulling out their phones to record the scene. Marcus noticed that Janet Cooper was filming too. "I will not be leaving," Marcus said, standing his ground. "I have paid for my room, I have broken no rules, and your treatment of me has been completely unprofessional." "Listen here," Peterson growled, losing his temper. "I am the manager of this hotel, and I have the right to remove anyone I consider suspicious. Now leave before we make you leave." The situation was getting dangerous. Marcus could see more security guards approaching. Hotel guests were whispering and pointing. Some looked concerned, while others just seemed entertained by the drama. Marcus reached slowly into his backpack, making Mike the security guard tense up, but instead of a weapon, Marcus pulled out a folder full of papers. His hands were steady as he opened it. "Actually, Mr. Peterson," Marcus said clearly, so everyone could hear, "I think there's something you should know about who has the right to remove people from this hotel." Peterson snorted. "Nothing in that folder changes the fact that you're leaving right now." "Oh, but it does," Marcus replied. He pulled out a document and held it up. "You see, I've been watching how this hotel treats certain guests differently. How security follows them, how staff disrespects them, how services are delayed or denied. I've documented everything." "I don't care what you've written down. You're nothing but a troublemaker." Peterson reached for the papers, but Marcus moved them away. "Mr. Peterson," Marcus said, his voice now carrying authority that made everyone in the lobby freeze. "I am Marcus Thompson, and as of last week, I own the Grand Plaza Hotel. These papers prove it. Now, would you like to continue this conversation in your office, or shall we keep discussing your discriminatory practices here in the lobby?" The silence that followed was deafening. The lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel had never been so quiet. James Peterson's face turned from angry red to ghostly white as he stared at the ownership papers in Marcus's hands. Mike, the security guard, lowered his radio slowly, and Sarah Chen at the front desk looked like she might faint. This must be some kind of mistake," Peterson stammered, his voice barely a whisper now. His hands were shaking as he reached for the documents. Marcus handed them over calmly, watching as the manager's eyes scanned the papers over and over again. Hotel guests had formed a circle around them, many still recording with their phones. Janet Cooper, the businesswoman who had been discriminated against earlier, stepped forward with a surprised smile on her face. "If I understand correctly," she said loudly, "the man you just tried to throw out is actually the owner of this hotel." Her phone was still recording everything. Marcus nodded politely to her. "Yes, ma'am. I bought the Grand Plaza last week. I always spend a few days as a regular guest in my hotels, to see how they really treat people." He turned back to Peterson. "And I must say, these past 3 days have been very educational." Peterson's legs seemed weak, and he had to lean against the front desk for support. Sarah Chen had disappeared from her post, and other staff members were trying to blend into the background or slip away quietly. "Mr. Thompson, sir," Peterson began, his voice trembling, "I can explain everything. We have procedures, you see, for security purposes." Marcus held up his hand, stopping Peterson mid-sentence. "I've seen your procedures in action, Mr. Peterson. I've documented exactly how differently they're applied depending on a guest's skin color." He pulled out his phone and opened his notes app. "Would you like me to read some examples?" The crowd of guests was growing larger. Among them, Marcus noticed several people of color nodding in understanding. They had probably experienced similar treatment themselves. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private," Peterson suggested weakly, looking around at all the watching eyes and recording phones. Just like you wanted to discuss my removal in private. Marcus asked calmly. No, I think this needs to be addressed right here. Your staff has had no problem publicly humiliating guests of color. Let's be just as public about fixing this problem. Marcus turned to address everyone in the lobby. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. What you've witnessed today is unfortunately not an isolated incident. Over the past 3 days, I've experienced and observed systematic discrimination in this hotel. As the new owner, I promise you this will change, starting right now. A small burst of applause broke out among the guests. Janet Cooper stepped forward again. Mr. Thompson, I'm actually here for the National Hotel Management Conference. Would you be interested in speaking about this experience? I think a lot of people need to hear this story. Marcus smiled. I'd be happy to, Ms. Cooper. But first, he turned back to Peterson, who was still clutching the ownership papers. We need to make some immediate changes here. Just then, Thomas Wright, the hotel's head of human resources, came rushing through the lobby. Someone had called him about the situation. He stopped short when he saw the scene before him. Mr. Wright, Marcus called out, recognizing him from the hotel's personnel files. Perfect timing. Please gather all department heads and available staff in the main conference room immediately. We're having an emergency meeting. As Wright hurried off to make calls, Marcus addressed the remaining guests. I apologize again for this scene. Please enjoy the rest of your stay. I assure you, the Grand Plaza is about to become a very different hotel. Peterson still stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. The security guards had backed away, and the other staff members looked terrified. Marcus checked his watch. It was only 10:30 a.m. Well, he said, straightening his simple black t-shirt, it seems my undercover stay is ending a bit earlier than planned. Mr. Peterson, shall we go to your office? We have a lot to discuss before the staff meeting. As Marcus walked toward the manager's office, phone cameras followed him. In just 3 days, he had gathered enough evidence to completely transform the Grand Plaza Hotel. Now the real work would begin. An hour later, the Grand Plaza Hotel's main conference room was packed with nervous staff members. Department heads sat at the front, while other employees lined the walls. James Peterson sat alone in a corner, still looking pale and shocked. The room buzzed with whispered conversations as everyone waited for Marcus to begin. Marcus stood at the front of the room, his laptop connected to a large screen. He had changed from his casual clothes into a neat business suit that he brought with him. The transformation from suspicious guest to powerful hotel owner was complete, and every eye in the room watched him nervously. Good morning, everyone, Marcus began, his voice firm but calm. I'm Marcus Thompson, your new owner. For the past 3 days, I've been a guest in this hotel. I've experienced firsthand how this establishment treats people of different races differently. He clicked a button, and pictures appeared on the screen. They showed security guards following black guests, the restaurant hosts seating people of color near the kitchen, and timestamps of delayed room service for certain guests. These are just a few examples, Marcus continued. I've documented every incident. The cold food delivered to my room, the excessive ID checks, the constant security surveillance, the rude service, the unfair treatment of guests based on their skin color. Sarah Chen, the front desk clerk, stared at her hands in her lap. Mike the security guard shifted uncomfortably against the wall. Some staff members had tears in their eyes, while others looked defensive. I'm not here to fire everyone, Marcus announced, surprising many in the room. That would be easy, but it wouldn't solve the real problem. Instead, we're going to learn from this and make real changes. He walked around the room slowly, making eye contact with different staff members. I started as a dishwasher 25 years ago. I've faced discrimination at every step of my career, but I've also seen how education and understanding can change people's hearts and minds. Marcus clicked to the next slide, which showed his plan for the hotel. Starting tomorrow, we're bringing in professional trainers for a comprehensive anti-bias program. Every single employee will participate, from the managers to the housekeepers. Thomas Wright, the HR head, was taking rapid notes. Marcus continued, we're also making immediate changes to our policies. All guest complaints will now be recorded and reviewed weekly. Security procedures will be standardized and monitored. Room service times will be tracked and analyzed. He paused, looking directly at Peterson. Some leadership changes are necessary. Mr. Peterson, you have a choice. You can resign immediately, or you can undergo extensive retraining and work under close supervision. The same goes for other managers who participated in discriminatory practices. Peterson nodded weakly, knowing he was lucky to even have a choice. Several other department heads looked equally uncomfortable. A young housekeeper raised her hand nervously. Mr. Thompson, what if we see other staff members treating guests unfairly? Excellent question, Marcus replied. We're setting up an anonymous reporting system. Any employee or guest can report unfair treatment without fear of retaliation. We're also creating a diversity and inclusion committee with real power to make changes. He clicked to another slide showing employment statistics. Looking at our staff, I notice we lack diversity in management positions. That will change. We'll implement fair hiring practices and create promotion opportunities for all qualified employees. The room was silent now, everyone taking in the magnitude of these changes. Marcus softened his tone slightly. I believe in second chances. I believe people can learn and grow. But I won't tolerate discrimination in my hotel. This is your opportunity to be part of positive change. A maintenance worker spoke up from the back. Thank you, sir. Some of us have wanted to say something about these problems for a long time, but we were afraid. Marcus nodded understanding. Those days are over. From now on, the Grand Plaza will be known for treating everyone with respect and dignity, both guests and employees. The meeting lasted another hour as Marcus outlined more specific changes. By the end, some staff members were wiping away tears, others were nodding with determination, and a few had already handed in their resignations. As people filed out of the conference room, Marcus knew this was just the beginning. Changing a culture wouldn't happen overnight, but the first step had been taken. The Grand Plaza Hotel would never be the same again. 1 month after the dramatic revelation, the Grand Plaza Hotel was a different place. Marcus sat in his new office, reviewing the changes that had taken place. The large windows behind his desk looked out over the city, reminding him of how far he had come from his days as a dishwasher. James Peterson had chosen to resign, along with 5 other managers who couldn't accept the new direction. Sarah Chen, however, had surprised everyone by asking to stay and learn. She was now working closely with the diversity trainers, sharing her own journey of recognizing and overcoming her biases. The morning staff meeting was about to begin, and Marcus walked to the conference room. The atmosphere was completely different from that tense day 1 month ago. Staff members greeted each other warmly, and the room had been rearranged so everyone sat in a circle, removing the old hierarchy. Good morning, everyone, Marcus said, taking his seat. Let's start with our weekly review. Maria, how are the new hiring practices working? Maria Rodriguez, the newly promoted HR director, smiled proudly. We've hired 15 new staff members from diverse backgrounds. 3 of them are already in management training. Our job fairs in different communities have been very successful. Marcus nodded approvingly. He looked at Mike, the security guard who had once followed him around the hotel. Mike had chosen to stay and change, and now he was head of the new security training program. Security update, Mike? Marcus asked. Big improvements, sir, Mike reported. Our new standardized check-in procedures are working well. Every guest gets the same respectful treatment. We've installed new cameras to monitor our own behavior, and weekly reviews show no racial bias in our surveillance patterns. The changes went beyond just policies. The hotel had been physically transformed too. The restaurant seating was now completely random, controlled by a computer system. Room service delivery times were tracked digitally, ensuring every guest received equally prompt service. Even the lobby had been redesigned to be more welcoming to everyone. Lisa Martinez, the new front desk manager, raised her hand. The guest feedback has been amazing, Mr. Thompson. Our satisfaction scores are up 40%, and look at these comments. She passed around some guest reviews praising the hotel's inclusive atmosphere and friendly staff. Marcus smiled as he read the reviews. One caught his eye. As a person of color who travels frequently, the Grand Plaza is now my favorite hotel. The staff treats everyone like VIPs. What a difference from my stay here 6 months ago. The new Diversity and Inclusion Committee, led by former housekeeper Jenny Williams, presented their latest initiatives. They had started mentoring programs, cultural celebration events, and regular feedback sessions where staff could openly discuss challenges and solutions. The anonymous reporting system has been quiet lately, Jenny reported. Last week, we only had 2 reports, and both were minor misunderstandings that we quickly resolved through mediation. Marcus watched his team with pride. The mandatory training sessions had been tough at first. Some staff members resisted, others felt uncomfortable discussing their biases. But slowly, people began to open up, share their experiences, and learn from each other. Sarah Chen, who now worked in guest relations, shared a story that moved everyone. Yesterday, I checked in a family that reminded me of the guests I used to treat poorly. But this time, I caught myself immediately. I gave them our best service, recommended local restaurants, and later they sent a thank you note saying it was their best hotel experience ever. The meeting continued with more updates. The hotel's occupancy rates were at an all-time high. Staff turnover had dropped significantly. Other hotels were calling to learn about their diversity programs. Marcus had even been invited to speak at national hospitality conferences about transforming workplace culture. Remember, Marcus said as the meeting ended, "Change is a continuous process. We've made great progress, but we must keep learning and improving. Every guest who walks through our doors deserves our best, regardless of who they are." As the staff left the conference room, Marcus noticed something remarkable. People weren't just following new rules, they had truly changed their attitudes. He saw genuine friendships forming across racial lines, staff members helping each other learn and grow, and a sense of pride in being part of this transformation. The Grand Plaza Hotel was becoming exactly what Marcus had dreamed of, a place where everyone felt welcome, valued, and respected. The painful experiences of his undercover stay had led to something beautiful, real, lasting change. 6 months after Marcus Thompson's undercover stay, the Grand Plaza Hotel had become famous for all the right reasons. On a bright morning, Marcus stood in the lobby watching the busy scene before him. The space was filled with all kinds of people, business travelers, tourists, families, and every single one received the same warm welcome. Today was special. News cameras were setting up in the Grand Ballroom for an important announcement. The Grand Plaza was launching the Hospitality for All initiative, a program that would help other hotels learn from their transformation. Hotel owners and managers from across the country had come to see how real change was possible. Sarah Chen, now the hotel's director of guest relations, was giving a tour to some visitors. Before Mr. Thompson's undercover visit, she explained, "I was part of the problem. Now, I teach other hotels how to recognize and fix discrimination in their service." Marcus smiled, remembering how far Sarah had come. She had worked harder than anyone to change, and her personal story of transformation had inspired many others. The front desk where she once showed bias was now a model of fair treatment, with staff from many different backgrounds working together. In the restaurant, Marcus saw a familiar face, Janet Cooper, the businesswoman who had witnessed his revelation 6 months ago. She was having breakfast with hotel executives from around the world, sharing her perspective as both a witness to the old system and a frequent guest under the new one. "The difference is like night and day," Janet was saying. "The Grand Plaza isn't just talking about equality, they're living it. Every guest gets 5-star treatment, no exceptions." The hotel's success had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Their occupancy rates were the highest in the city. They had won several awards for excellence in hospitality and workplace culture. But more importantly, they had created a blueprint for change that other hotels could follow. Marcus walked through the newly renovated spaces. The security office, once a place where guards planned which guests to follow, was now a training center. Through the glass walls, he could see Mike teaching new officers about fair treatment and professional behavior. "Remember," Mike was saying to his class, "our job is to keep everyone safe, not to make anyone feel unwelcome. Every guest deserves to feel secure and respected in our hotel." Near the elevators, Marcus passed Jenny Williams, the former housekeeper who now ran the hotel's diversity and inclusion programs. She was posting announcements for next week's cultural celebration event, where staff would share food and stories from their different backgrounds. "Mr. Thompson," Jenny called out, "we just got the results from our latest staff survey. Employee happiness is at 96%, and turnover is the lowest it's ever been." Marcus checked his watch. It was almost time for the press conference. In the ballroom, hotel owners and journalists were taking their seats. The story of the Grand Plaza's transformation had caught national attention, and today they would announce their plans to help other hotels change too. Before heading to the ballroom, Marcus stopped to help an elderly couple with their bags. They didn't know he was the owner. To them, he was just another helpful staff member. That's exactly how he wanted it to be. "Welcome to the Grand Plaza," he said warmly. "Can I help you find your room?" The couple smiled, mentioning they had stayed at the hotel years ago. "It's different now," the woman said. "Better. Everyone is so kind, and you can feel that it's genuine." In the ballroom, Marcus took the stage. Camera lights flashed as he began to speak about the Hospitality for All program. He explained how they would share their training materials, policies, and experiences with other hotels. Teams from the Grand Plaza would travel to help other establishments make similar changes. 6 months ago, Marcus told the crowd, this hotel was a place of discrimination and unfair treatment. Today, it's a model of equality and excellence. But we're not stopping here. Every hotel guest in every city deserves to feel welcome, respected, and valued. As he spoke, Marcus thought about his journey from dishwasher to hotel owner, from undercover guest to agent of change. The Grand Plaza's transformation wasn't just about one hotel. It was about changing the entire hospitality industry. "This is just the beginning," Marcus concluded. "Together, we can make every hotel a place where everyone truly belongs." The applause that filled the ballroom wasn't just for his speech. It was for every person who had helped make this change possible, from the housekeepers to the managers, from those who had stayed to learn to those who had supported the transformation. The Grand Plaza had become more than a luxury hotel. It had become a symbol of how positive change could transform not just a business, but an entire industry. Last edited 2 hours ago.